Yo, how you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 107 of the Simpa Life Podcast. Hope you're keeping well. Just a little bit of a gremlin in the system here, so we're redoing this one. So it's going to be a slightly different intro to whatever intro you're not going to see because, you just are not seeing it. We haven't recorded it. We haven't edited it. So I don't even know why I'm telling you about it, to be honest, folks. Hope you're having a wonderful time wherever you are in the world. I know obviously the majority of you fine folk are in the Northern Hemisphere, which means it's getting warmer, it's getting brighter. I know I say this every week, but I am obsessed with the sun. I live in the northeast of England and there's very little up here. So yeah, whenever we get an opportunity to bathe within its glory, I want to be there and in it. So that's about 2 weeks in July, I think we get. And then the rest of it is just cold and bloody snowy. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on to today's guest, who is possibly one of the most prolific authors I think we've had on this podcast. And we've had some sensational writers in this space. An advocate who has been at this a good several decades, that has traversed the world, that has been involved in most things cannabis. So I'm very eager to introduce today's guest, who is an award-winning cannabis cultivator, prolific author, having written over 50 books, I think we were discussing yesterday. They're a cannabis advocate and photographer, with their work being translated into 8 different languages. They are Jorge Cervantes. How are you doing, brother?
Hey, really good, really good. Thank you so much, Simpa, for having me on your program. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I'm out back doing stuff now. I mean, I've been active, like you said, decades, actually 40 years now. I can't believe it. It's been 40 years since I went public, the first time. And then I was involved in the industry for a few years before that as well, in a different capacity, let's say. And and now I'm doing all kinds of digital stuff, because that's really, the digital world is just amazing. I'm not going to be publishing paper books anymore. I don't plan to. Maybe there's going to be a demand for it, but my goal is to keep everything digital these days. And it's really cool to see in the book business, because that's all I've done, like 50 books, like you said, in the intro. And the deal is, there's so much involved in that, just to make the book and get it to the end consumer, so that's over half of the work. But now if I just do digital stuff, I mean, it's still work because I got to learn a bunch of digital things, but I can translate books a lot faster and get them straight out to the market a lot faster. And the market is huge, because all of my books, I'm putting everything out for free now. So that's going to be a big change. But I figured now's the time to do it, and then grow a great big community worldwide. Because, I mean, I seem to know a lot of people, or a lot of people know me, really. So I think if we all get together, we can make a good central place for information, and everybody can learn a lot. It'll be great. But the first language I'm going into, it's an easy one, it's Spanish, because, I'm here in Spain and stuff, and Spanish is my second language. So I've got to have a native translator do it, because you can only have a native person translate for you. So that's kind of what I'm doing these days. And it's pretty cool. I get to work with some young guys, or they're in their 40s, so that's pretty young to me.
Nice. Yeah, it's a real sort of merging with the generations, and this is something I celebrate, champion, and advocate for on this platform, is that we all, as long as we're in the space and the fight for cannabis, and we're doing it from a place of sincerity and genuine enthusiasm, we've got so much to teach each other. And the young guys coming up now with their tech and techniques and all the technology that they've got, and then meeting up with guys like yourself that are like, no, we've been in the field for 40 years. This is what happens and how it's done. You can apply all your theory you want, but until you've had to hide 1,000 plants from a helicopter in the local police, do you really know how to grow cannabis,
Jesus. Yeah, yeah. Well, there's so many different ways that it's gone. I mean, before it would be it was a lot easier because there was less information. In a way, it was a lot easier. And now, gosh, the information, the ability to collect information is and disseminate has just gone incredibly wild. And two, people are well educated now. They can, you've got light engineers involved in the industry, not on the other side, in the horticultural side, growing, tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers or bedding plants, with artificial lights. You've got people that are just totally straight on into cannabis and light, and as well with nutrients too. And the other thing, the huge part is breeding. Breeding's just gone, oh, and the tests that you can do are well, they're just straightforward. They're finding all these things that in the breeding world, markers, for example, that control different traits and characteristics of a plant. And none of that stuff was available before. But then again, you get all that new information and other people just kind of get in and mix it up a little bit and make it a little bit confusing. It's already complicated enough.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, you're right. It literally used to be you'd get a hold of a seed and it would be cannabis. It wouldn't even necessarily be a cultivar. And people would just be like, here's that plant. And they'd be like, it needs light, it needs a bit of water, it needs a bit of soil. And then obviously from that, we've branched out into like deep water cultivation, hydroponics, all kinds of different aeration and different methods. You've got, I can't remember what the one's called with fish. Aquaponics is where you're using fish. Fish waste. And there's obviously, as I said, with the testing, you can now test. I mean, they're doing developing cultivars from literally cuts of leaves. They're using tissue culture, and then you can test a plant that's this big if it's going to be male or female. There's so much, like you said, there's so much more. But then your guy was like, well, I got the seed and grew it in the cupboard with water and light. Then compared to this other world, they seem completely different. Whereas I suppose you can make cannabis either as simple as you want or as complicated as you want.
Very true, very true. And it's funny because the way the seed business grew was pretty interesting because basically it all just centered in the Netherlands. 40 years ago, really, 45 years ago. As long maybe a bit 50 years ago, but 45 years ago. And everything kind of centered there, and everybody just went for potency. And that's where a lot of the varieties and stuff came together. And it's all, it's all really gone from there. That was the center spot. And, oh man, and you look at the way things have developed, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. Now there's plants that do well outside. Well, I don't know what does well outside up there in the northwest of the UK. What kind of a plant? Does anything grow well up there and make it through the rain and stuff?
We're obviously just down from Scotland, sort of in the northeast, but the northwest similar sort of climate. Although the northwest is a bit wetter because they've got sort of the peaks and the Lake District, so that kind of keeps localized weather systems. But up in Scotland, there's a guy that we've had on previous guest, Kyle Esplin, who's the head of the Scottish Hemp Association. They've now got, I think last count was 7 or 8 farmers growing a variety called Finola, which is
that's the main one.
And so Finola is obviously well established, comes from I think Finland, Scandinavian sort of regions, and that's really quite adaptive. And now they're not necessarily them, but other people are playing with Finola and other established genetics, and potentially making it too hot, as in it's the cannabinoid profile and whatever. So it's not legal in the same way that air quotes hemp is due to legislation. Right. But there are people experimenting and finding that it is adapted. It is obviously cannabis and massively is an adaptogen. So she will within a few cycles get down to it, it's not necessarily we couldn't pull, say, an Afghani and in one generation stick her outside my house. But as you'll have seen in your own career, that as it moves from its sort of landrace place and it establishes and becomes heirloom in a region, the plant's amazing. She just kind of goes, okay, I've got this much water. That's what water I'll use. I get this much sun. That's what sun I'll use.
Yeah, you know yeah, I mean? It's really adaptable. It's tough as hell, really is. It's just a real strong plant, and that's the thing. You know what they would do up in over in Humboldt County was real popular in Southern Oregon too. I mean that whole area is a big growing region. What they do is take a lower branch of the plant and then fertilize that lower branch, the whole thing, about that long, and the entire bud. And you'd have, you know, like, I don't know, 5,000 seeds, you know? I mean, you'd have just tons of seeds. You'd have all kinds. So you could take those and breed them, cross them with everything else, and localize them to your area. And there's quite a few, well, there's a lot of gardeners that did that over the years. And it takes about 5 years, and you've got a real localized plant. And if you breed it back into other plants of the same genetic and you're lucky and you don't hit any recessive genes that stay there, you've got a pretty darn good, strong plant. So you guys, and that's the way everybody does it. I mean, that's really basic, but it works. But you guys can do that up there with Finola, and boy, I mean, just a little bit of genetic knowledge would go a long way with that. See, yeah. But a lot of that stuff you can. I don't know if you could look that up. I don't know specifically enough about that. If there's if there are markers for hardiness.
I think there's a company in I think it was 2019. I'm trying to look through blogs in my head that I've written, and they were trying to basically patent what they called the day neutral gene, which is what triggers what triggers the autoflowering mechanism.
No, that can't. They can't. You can't patent that.
No, I think what it was, they tried to patent the process for triggering it. So basically, they were saying you give them a cultivar, and through their patented process, they could then turn that into an auto. So obviously, we know companies will then just interbreed with the ruderalis, and that ruderalis genetic is what is triggering it. So it's whether they're trying to say that their specific version of it, or whether they had some sort of CRISPR technique or some sort of gene editing.
Well, CRISPR technique doesn't go over too well in this industry, but the other thing is, that's just because here's the way the autoflowers work. There's a couple of genes that trigger the daylight neutral part. So what that means is that controls the first part of the plant, basically, or the first part of the plant's life. It starts to flower, but you know, they start to flower slowly, and then they develop slowly as the foliage grows and everything over time, but a pretty short time. Whereas, you know, like the photoperiodic reactive plants, you know, that take 12 hours of darkness to flower, those, when they go into flowering, it's just basically an on-off switch, and they immediately start into flowering, and the progression is quite a bit different. So what happens when you put the one gene with the other, the auto-flowering gene, or the daylight neutral gene, it really is, genes, put them in with the regular plant like that, what they do is there's a good big portion generally of the photoperiodic reactive plant that dominates the flowering process. So say if it's an Afghani and it flowers normally in like 7 weeks, 6.5, 7 weeks, you know, and it's like pretty like right at close to or done really, that will dominate. But if it's a long flowering sativa that could take up to 12 weeks or 10 weeks, then that's going to dominate. So it can take much longer. And what's been happening is, and it really hasn't been defined yet, is that people have been doing that a lot. And I was in Oregon, in my hometown, and there was a guy there. Oh man, he's been reading his whole life, and he's professor emeritus at the Oregon State University in Corvallis, and he runs the breeding program for cannabis. He's the base of knowledge for them. And he's got a huge test garden that I visited. And he's working with him because he's working for the state. But he also has developed more auto-flowering, productive hemp plants than I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing. And and he's got a doctorate degree in genetics, and he's been breeding his entire adult life, he's like 76 years old, right? So he's been like over 50 years breeding. I went to a house and he breeds everything. Cannabis is just one of the plants that he's done in his life. He's lived in Brazil and Colombia, done tons of stuff, and now he's doing this. So we got guys like that are interested. And man, they're just smarter than everybody else. They got more experience. They're well educated, and guys like that can develop things very, very quickly. Because I saw him in 4 years since I've known him go from basically, going out and buying a bunch of seeds and running things down and talking to people on farms to being king of the hill, as far as knowledge and development goes. So I think we're going to see quite a few people like that, because he's not alone. And there's quite a few well-educated, dedicated people like him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, with restrictions being lifted in various regions around the world, now officially since November last year, more than 50% of Americans or US citizens have access to, in some way, legal cannabis. Should air quote legal cannabis there, the bastardization of the word legal. But yeah, it's brilliant that people like this are doing the work. I think this leads wonderfully onto a question that I wanted to ask, and something that I discuss with all of my guests, because I have kind of a pet peeve, a bit of an issue and a bone to pick with some of the language that we use around cannabis. And I feel that the people like this that are full of passion, that are full of enthusiasm and full of curiosity and the drive and desire to go and actually, learn about this plant, they're hampered. Both hands are tied behind their back because of the language we inherit. So in America, the plant Cannabis sativa L and its subgenus Cannabis sativa, Cannabis indica, Cannabis ruderalis are considered either hemp or marijuana, neither of which is what cannabis is. So obviously the Hemp Act was passed in 2018 in America as part of the Farming Bill, and it's created this further created this division. So it's wonderful that, and again, I've seen similar projects where they're trying to basically create agricultural low THC cannabis, air quotes hemp, so-called colloquial termed hemp, which would be massively productive for industrial production. But what we're seeing is that turned into biomass, then turned into consumables, Delta 8, Delta 10, THCP, THCO, CBD HQ, LMNOP, FL 75, pick your fucking acronyms. And so it feels like the capitalist elements within our system want there to be a difference between hemp and marijuana, so they can strictly limit, air quotes, marijuana, or as we call it in the UK, skunk, rather than medical cannabis. Again, another misnomer. They want to keep this division so that they get the best of both worlds. It is a dangerous drug and you can go to prison for it, but it's also a wonderful life-saving medicine when we produce it and we sell it. And so my question is, what is your sort of opinion on, I suppose, firstly, the term hemp? We'll start with hemp.
Okay. So we always called it rope and dope, right? You've got well, marijuana, slang term for cannabis. Yeah, well, let's go back to where it was Linnaeus, the guy that classified the plant kingdom, Swedish guy. Yeah, he did this back in I don't know, like
17 something.
17 something. Yeah. So he didn't travel all the way around the world. He didn't know about a lot of plants, but he did set up a system. And then later they found all the other stuff, the Indian hemp, they called it. That's what the Brits called it. So there's been a distinction, I mean, we used hemp for, sails and rigging for ships, ropes, everything for ships. And you always had to plant it everywhere. So hemp got distributed all over the world in all of the port cities because it had to be planted there for the sails and the ships. And anyway, now we've got a situation. What's happened is with the hemp, they've done all this stuff. They've done inbred lines, right? All of these varieties are inbred, and they're stable, but they're inbred. So what that does is that limits the genetic profile of these plants, and they can become susceptible to insect and disease or pest and disease attacks much more easily than the drug cannabis can. Mm-hmm. So this plant, and it was developed, for fiber and for seeds. Those two are the two main things. But it was developed within a real narrow gene pool because it had to be, because of the laws and the way it was politically controlled. Mm-hmm. So now, and like you mentioned Farola, well, the deal is there's I don't know maybe 50, if there's that many different hemp varieties that are legal to grow in Europe. Mm-hmm. So you have to grow one of those and you have to get it from a designated source and stuff. Okay. But this gene pool really can't be improved. Mm-hmm. Because they don't have any, they've got the real low THC in it, right? And it's developed for this and it grows really quickly and stuff. But the problem is, if you mix, because the problem is when you mix in the drug cannabis with this, and you can improve it, the resistance, all kinds of stuff. A lot of different qualities, but you need both of them to be mixed together. It's really important. But as soon as you do that, as soon as you introduce the THC or the drug cannabis side, even though it's got tons of CBD in it, there's the more potent the CBD gets, the THC follows it. Mm-hmm. So you've got a few, and it's a biological factor that's we haven't overcome yet, and so that's a big problem. But what's really necessary is both of the drug cannabis and the industrial or the hemp cannabis. These genes really do need to be mixed, and they just need to get over this crazy stigma about drugs. And meantime, there's a lot of big money players that are, out there playing with these concepts. But, from a breeding and a development point of view, that's really what needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I entirely agree. And it's something I've seen universally. Let's stick with the Western world because things get complicated when we say the word hemp and THC percentages when you go to Asia. So we'll park that for a second. But when looking at sort of Europe and America, it's colloquially used hemp means less than 0.203% THC. And by its nature, cannabis sativa L generally, regardless of its number of subspecies, tends to obviously use its cannabinoid as almost a UV protectant. There are then sort of terpenes and other sort of things, solvents that are developed as part of its natural pesticides and its own sort of evolutionary cycle that, as you say, once you strip one thing away, the plant through cycle iteration becomes more and more limited and weaker. I mean, yeah, it serves the function in terms of that makes good fiber, but then you have to start putting pesticides and petro-based fertilizers into the grounds when you miss the point of using cannabis on mass as an agricultural system. But what we're seeing universally in the Western, you'd say northwestern hemisphere of the world, I know it doesn't work like that, but I'm just picturing our minds that way, that so-called hemp will become cannabis in a cycle, which we artificially sexually frustrate this dionysius plant, force it into this thing and go, stay there. As soon as she goes out in the field, she goes, ooh, UV, ooh, wind, ooh, water, ooh, minerals, ooh, other things, and it stimulates and triggers. And I think that there are certain subspecies, like, the freak show and the few other genetics that we found that produce no cannabinoids at all. I think that should be the future of so-called hemp. If we're then going to have this argument about cannabinoid production, because cannabis is also a bioremedial product, isn't it? Obviously, it's going to accumulate all of the biomass from the soil. So then if we're using something like a freak show or another genetic similar that doesn't produce cannabinoids, ergo consumables, we're not then going to put the heavier elements into the human body.
My understanding is, freak show does produce cannabinoids, maybe.
It wasn't maybe specific. I just meant in terms of a genetic abnormality outside of our traditional understanding of cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It could be an ornamental for sure. But the deal is, as far as crops go, see, cannabis, and I don't know enough of what I'm talking about to be very adept at it right now, though. But it's got a protein level as far as fodder goes, for animal feed. So it can be used as animal feed, but it needs to be beefed up a bit. It needs to be developed more so it has a higher protein levels in it.
Mixed with the seed, I suppose, would that be quite useful?
As well. Yes. The seed's a big part that has that, but I'm talking about biomass for animal feed. Because right now they're using a lot of soy for animal feed. And if you can replace some crops with cannabis, soy takes a lot of chemicals. It's a high consumer of fertilizers and stuff. So, and it gets diseases and pests, right? So, and it's a heavy water consumer. Cannabis doesn't use as much water, and it doesn't get, it's diseases and pests. It's not real heavy with diseases and pests. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of varieties that are really, really strong. So, there's a lot of development there that can be done, but animal feed would be huge. One of my friends he's Jerry Norton. He's head of the hemp societies in Oregon. He had fairs there for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. Yeah, hemp fairs. Great big ones, agricultural ones. He's also in the grass seed business. But he's into racehorses, and he was putting his 2-year-olds and his thoroughbreds on hemp fodder to eat and train. And he said they didn't seem to have any problems, because racehorses are especially thoroughbreds, they've got all kinds of physical problems, and they didn't seem to have any physical problems during that time, and they were stronger overall, and their coats looked better, and overall healthier, and they were consistent runners. And the racehorse authority there, they said that he couldn't use him, so he had to take him off of it 2 months ahead of time, so they could get it out of their system and they wouldn't test for it. But see, there's a lot of things like that. These guys, they don't change very fast. They're old racehorse guys and, cattle guys, and they're not gonna, those guys are, they've been doing this for the same for a lot of years. But if there's a better way, it's going to take them a while. They got to be proved it to them 3 or 4 times. And then they've got to implement it by one of their neighbors. But that takes 10 years, all of that stuff.
And,
that's the hard part.
And the rest. And I think this is why my ideal here would be that we create zero cannabinoid producing cultivars of cannabis. I mean, if you look back at the Soviet era research,
right.
So at the height of the Soviet empire, they were looking at, was it between 13 and 30 subcultivars of cannabis. They'd broken it because the Soviets, obviously, they accrued such a vast amount of space when they incorporated, for lack of a better way of saying it. I mean, that's making light of a lot of history, but I just mean that they basically quickly accrued a lot of cultures that traditionally, historically, were on either Silk Road routes, were part of like Ottoman Empire, other regions where cannabis was an intricate part of that society. So they'd had these natural adaptive heirlooms and landrace cultivars in the regions that had really different expressions in taxonomy. So they were then looking at, this is kind of what the other Europeans would just say, that's that hempy type, sativa, low cannabinoid. But they'd look at it and go, well, no, that's more of a drug type. That's more of this climate type. And they were breaking it down. And I think that if we push forward through that kind of research, we will find what should be acceptable, like I said, these hemp cultivars that will not have abnormalities in their genes or their expression that mean they will not express cannabinoids. They may express terpenes because they'll obviously express terpenoids because the plant will still need terpenoids. But in terms of them producing psychoactive cannabinoids, because even CBD, this is the issue. My problem with the hemp market right now is none of it is doing what it should be. It's all being made into biomass to be made into consumables to circumnavigate THC laws, when it should be building houses, it should be sequestering carbon, it should be removing nuclear materials, it should be removing heavy metals. Do you know what I mean? All of those other things that then it can be made into a toxic byproduct, as in the cannabis itself becomes toxic, non-consumable, but can then still become an industrial material and something useful for humanity. Whereas at the minute, we see these huge fields of so-called hemp, and then it's produced into flowers. It's cut basically for the flower mass. And then that is made into, like I said, these chemically synthesized cannabinoids. And yes, some of the biomass will go to, as in the fibrous material, the husk and whatever else, will go towards other uses. But it just feels like a diversion, because if we had a rich and robust enough cannabis industry across the world, as in producing all of the cannabinoids, terpenoids, all of those byproducts with those things, then the physical mass of it that replaces your concrete, that replaces your plastics. There's your graphene supercapacitor batteries, you know, your rebar, your wood, your tiles. You know, you can build basically anything from cannabis composite.
Well, yeah, you can, but the thing is, I watched this happen in the United States, in Oregon, and also in California, but really very much so in Oregon. They were growing. I was hanging out with my buddy Jerry back then, Jerry Norton, and we go around to farms and stuff, hemp farms. And everybody, I mean, they had thousands of acres growing there, thousands of acres of hemp growing. And then, because one year, they were getting like, I don't know, $500 a pound or like a lot of money, or $2,000 a pound, or I don't know, a lot. I mean, it's just unbelievable numbers, you know. But if you have like 5 acres or 50 acres of it, that's a lot of pounds, you know. So, and they were selling it, dry but raw like that. And my gosh, they had so many thousands of acres, and then they don't have a market for it. So the market's got to be built, and that's going to require. The law's got to change. And especially like for animal feed, that's a big one. I think that's like a direct one. You can grow it, and you can feed it right there, or close by, or you can construction. That's a bit more. You know, you may have to process it and stuff, build bricks. That requires a factory. Fiber too. It can be used for fiber and seeds as well. But those markets have to be developed. That's really the big thing.
I suppose I think the language I guess we should use here is redeveloped, because originally paints, varnishes, lacquers, that was all cannabis seed.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same with all the clothing, paper materials. A lot of the original industries, cannabis was that. They just never got. It didn't. Cannabis didn't really scale up well through the first and second industrial revolution. For whatever reason, the powers that be went rope and dope, and they went, we want the rope, but that dope. So actually, we'll leave the rope. We'll go figure out our own thing. And now they're circling back, and they're doing the same again. They're going, we want the rope, but that dope, fucking shit. And they have to understand that if you want cannabis and you welcome it back in the fold, that means people are going to use it. And they're going to trade it, and it doesn't. You can't create the restrictive systems like California and Canada are doing, because guess what? People just go, "We're not going to participate. We'll continue to break the law, grow it ourselves, set up our own businesses." You know,
they're growing more than ever before. No, here's the big problem right now with the legal market in America. Well, especially California, and well. The overall legal market in America and Canada is, once the government got involved, they made them take their cannabis, package it, and then they keep it in a warehouse and all of this stuff. Anyway, the long and short of, once it gets through the whole government system, it's about a year. And it can be longer. So all of the dope's oxidized by then, and it's not as strong, and it doesn't taste as good, and they don't store it properly. So if for that reason, and that aside from cost or price, it drives people to the black market. Those are two major factors: quality and price. Because in the black market, it's usually about half the price, I think, or less. I don't know. I mean, there was so much cannabis there. They were giving it to me. I saw, because see, like, for example, okay, if we look at my home state of Oregon, it has 4 million people in the state. Okay. And there's, I don't know, like, let's, 200, 300, 500, 1,000, I don't know, a lot of people growing, but nobody can sell it. There's just like a huge supply, and there's not a big enough demand. And, there's like a quarter as many dispensaries as there are growers, registered growers. So there's about 4 times too many growers there at this time. And I saw people that had literally a ton, a half a ton, 2 tons in the warehouse, all boxed up, ready to go, and no buyer, And then that's when age started to become a real problem, because, well, everybody knows exactly how, or the state knows that you have, like, half a ton there, so you have to keep it. You can't, like, sell it out a little bit of time. It's there.
Yeah. Or you could write it off as a loss, which is, something we allegedly can see in various regions. I mean, Oregon is a really interesting one, because there's a little city, is it White City on the border? Southern Oregon, Northern California, or something city. I remember writing about it in 2021. Okay. And the sheriff in the region had declared basically like a state of emergency. And there's a guy I'm trying to get on the podcast, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And he works as basically like a game warden, forestry in the region. And over the past, since Oregon legalized, they've basically been trained up as like a militaristic unit to deal with the cartels, because Oregon, a lot of Oregon is woodland. A lot of it is
that's
very dispersed. I was looking at a drive around Oregon, and I basically went waterfall spotting, drove into Pendleton, picked up some really beautiful weed, and then just drove all the way around fucking Oregon, chasing waterfalls. It was a bloody beautiful couple of days. But it's so sparsely spaced, and it's not accessible, really. America, for my European listeners, the scale of the place is fucking enormous, and it is so interspaced that you've got to go, I'll stop at this petrol station because it's the last one till the end of the world, sort of thing. It's just, you've got to keep really moving with it. And in that space, it's being sort of utilized by certain cartels. Obviously, we're seeing a destabilization in Mexico with the Sonora cartel and a few others a bit more hyper violent. We're now seeing cannabis grown in America to be smuggled out of America to Mexico and to other places, and they're growing it in these sorts of regions in Oregon. And yeah, it's now there's a draft bill. I think it's what day are we on? I think yesterday, whenever the local not parliament, but the kind of version of parliament in Oregon, there's a draft bill that's supposed to be coming into discussion, which is basically to double the criminal measures for illegally cultivating cannabis. So if you grow over 100 plants without license in Oregon, they want to give you 10 years, and I think it's $250,000 fine.
Oh, wow.
So we're seeing that the consequences of this, that legalization works for some in some ways, but we have to figure out this ubiquity. As you said, the need to the logistics. There has to be the market for what is produced. And the reason that people are producing is supply and demand. So that until we have that, like what alcohol looks like in terms of legalization, people are going to exploit it. You know, Budweiser are not shooting at Heineken. You know, they're not attacking each other's gangs, burning down each other's pubs. Yet that's exactly what we see within the cannabis trade in the grey market, the so-called black market, and in the white legal market. We're still seeing a continuation of this violence, of this gangster mentality and sort of thuggish behavior and this hyper violence, and it doesn't really gel and sit right with the average cannabis consumer who's like, but everyone I know that smokes weed is peaceful. Do you know what I mean? And it's until how do we get cannabis back into the hands of people who just want to nerd out and be like, oh, look at this plant, come look at my buds. Do you know, the people that actually give a real shit about it? I'm not saying that we should be elitist or exclusionary, but we should promote actively the people that, like yourself, that have dedicated their lives to giving a fuck about this. Not some guy who's going, well, actually, Bob, in the fourth quarter, we can make 0.5 billion if we invest in, like, screw those guys, screw them. They're going to do their thing anyway. But the people leading the charge should be the people who in the dark protected this plant. Like yourself, you wrote books at a period in time where writing a book about cannabis would put you in a fucking prison cell.
Yeah, I used to have to wear a disguise and everything. And yeah, it was pretty rough for a while. It was pretty spooky. A lot of my friends went to jail. Yeah. A lot of hard times. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's got to be legalized. I like the model where everybody can grow a few plants. That works. And well, another thing in Oregon, but Oregon's just gone crazy because you can grow 4 plants at home. So the neighborhood kids don't even steal your backyard plants anymore. There's just too many of them. Everybody has so much cannabis all over the place. My goal is to turn it into like everybody's got so much of it that they don't know what to do with it. So they just forget about it. You know, it turns into a non-issue. I don't know how to turn that beep off. Does that come through?
I don't think it's coming through on the recording.
Oh, good. Okay, no worries. Okay. Yeah. So that's my goal. I don't know. Once it gets into the government's hands and the decisions go there, it's really difficult. I'm just glad that it's not like it used to be. You know, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. But as far as mafia people in Southern Oregon and Northern California, yeah, they're there. I think I met a few workers and stuff, from Central Europe, and also Latinos, from Colombia, and Mexico too. But I never really delved into it much. I know people have done business with mafia people there, and they say they're just like everybody else. You know, they're into the community and stuff, No, I mean, they may hang back a bit, but they said they're a force and stuff, buying and selling and growing. You know, so I kind of like take them seriously. But it's the thing is, see, is if the price can go down, it all turns out to be economic functions. If you can drive the price down on the cannabis, then people don't live out in the hills and grow it. They don't have to. and they all just disappear because the money's gone and there's no way to support themselves. But I've seen that over and over. It's kind of unpleasant to see the communities break up, but that's what happens. It's just not so serious. And then two, especially outdoors, the cannabis should be grown in agricultural areas. It shouldn't be grown up there on the mountains. It's not really good for the water runoff and the ecology up there, or in the mountains. If you grow it on flat land, it's a lot more. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a lot more. It's easier to measure the impacts, to understand what's happening to the local sort of ecology, the environment, and the mycology. To directly measure that impact. Whereas if, as you say, you are clandestinely trying to hide something, you will then typically, modify the landscape. You will create things that stop, defer, wind, water, eyesight, etc. from being, people seeing the plants. I think you bring up. It's a sort of an interesting point before. Should have in the next few weeks Max Daly, who is currently, I was looking at his job title there, his role, he's Vice's global drug editor. We've been in conversation the past sort of couple of years about getting him on the podcast, and we talk about a few different things. And he's just written an article recently in the UK of quite a tragic story of a guy that was beaten to death, an Albanian national that travelled 3 hours to go rob another Albanian grower in the UK, and three lads just kicked him to death, basically. And what Max has been highlighting, and what Vice has been doing a really good job on recently, and this isn't in any which way meant to be and shouldn't be taken as xenophobic or racist, but there is an Albanian takeover in cannabis and cocaine in Europe. They are operating, for all they're a small nation, less than 3 million as a population, they're smaller than Oregon. They are massively running the cocaine trade in Amsterdam, in Holland, in Belgium, in France, moving through Spain. They now have taken quite a stranglehold of the UK cannabis scene. And we're seeing in America that, again, the traditional gangs are kind of disappearing and dissipating because of how prevalent and powerful the cartels were. And the Sinaloa cartel worked really well for a long time because it was traditional, kind of almost Italian mafioso. It was, you look after your people. They know you're breaking the law and you're a criminal, but you don't fuck with people. This new style is hyper violent. You fuck with us, we burn your village to the ground style. And that's what we're seeing with the Albanian sort of, is that, again, that you come for us, we take you out. And they're buying up traditional gang networks, or they're conglomerating them in other ways, through violence, through, like I said, through mediation, even, through gentlemen's agreements and whatever. But we're seeing this now, issues with Albanian nationals moving into Colombia and Colombia, Bolivia, and places in the region, now trying to get direct sources to cocaine production. So obviously Colombia is having this conversation now about potentially legalizing, nationalizing cocaine trade and production, because they did a calculation and it basically would be cheaper for Colombia to buy the cocaine that all of the farmers produce than it would for them to police and try and destroy it. They would save money. Then they would have all that cocaine, which the UK, guess what? We're the world's largest importer of, air quotes, medical cocaine, which is mental when you really think about it. We import kilos of the fucking stuff every year. And then for some reason, we're never really told what happens to it. But that's freedom of information request in this country. You can only get so far with it. But yeah, basically what I'm saying is that these legalized drug trades by the nation states would disempower the gangs, but only if it's done across the board. Because as soon as that place becomes legal, they just move it to the next place. And as you're saying, they're exploiting these regions. So now the UK is talking about, certain parts of the UK, mainly the policing institutions, are talking about, well, what does decriminalization look like? That if it's not done in the right way, all you are doing is giving these networks the keys, further the keys to the kingdom. Because then if the police are not then going to stop them for what they're doing with the cannabis production, obviously, they'd still go after them for violence, attacking, killing each other, etc. But there needs to be this kind of form of regulation. But then if you go into national regulation, like the models we're seeing in Canada, it then gets exploited by capitalism. By whoever's got the biggest checkbook wins, and the kids on the bottom that are like, the younger versions of yourself and I that have been working through this and are still working through this in their own way that deserve a piece of that pie.
Well, boy, I hate to say it though, but I know Colombia a bit. I don't know the Colombian. I spent some time down there, or over there from where I'm at, and I didn't realize that the Albanian mafia or organized crime was making deals with those guys, with the Colombians. I know Mexico, and there's, oh man, as well. I know Mexico fairly well. And my gosh, the narcos there, they've got a lot of money, and they're going to be into any cannabis deals that are done, legal or illegal. They're going to be a part of them. Mm-hmm. And I believe so the same in Colombia, because see, these narcos, they're woven in with the politicos into the fabric of the whole culture. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys wear suits, and they know each other. They grew up together. See, a bunch of them did, or they grew up on the edge, and it doesn't surprise me when you learn a lot of stuff, But I've seen it like myself firsthand. And they're just not going to go away, is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. There's the real violent ones. They kind of like let a lot of that stuff play out. They really do. The guys on top, they don't really care. It makes a difference, but so man, I don't know. I mean, what I do know is the more money involved and the easier it is to concentrate, the more illegal guys we're going to find around, and the bigger the money, the bigger the gun, basically. And my goal has just been to diffuse all of that and just for everybody to grow and to learn as much and have little control. I know we're going to need control on genetic stuff, but as far as cannabis is, it just hasn't been a gateway drug. And as far as the mafia stuff goes, I know in Mexico and Colombia, those guys, I know a bit about them anyway. But the deal is, cannabis is really bulky, right? And so it's hard to smuggle, and it's hard to get a lot of it together to be worth a lot of money. Like if you had 20 pallets of cannabis there, or 20 pallets of cocaine, the cocaine would be worth 1,000 times more than the cannabis, right? So you stay with the one. It's easier to control. It's it's got other chemical properties, and it's not time sensitive like the cannabis is. There's a lot of great things. So it just kind of leads the mafia away from it until it gets easy to deal with. But when it gets concentrated, that could be a different thing. But the market doesn't seem to want that. So I don't know. I think they're going to be continually separate markets. Yeah, separate markets there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I mean the cartels, the Mexican cartels, have got really smart over the past 15, 20 years. I mean, they're invested in running things like avocados. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, right.
They're really diversifying, because once they've accrued, it's just the same as any kind of large multinational corporation. Once you've got enough assets and enough wealth, you then start to go, okay, let's vertically integrate. We're selling cocaine in that part of the world. Send your people over, you take over their distribution, you then take over transport and everything, and you work out these networks. And because they've refined this over time, as you say, with that hand in glove kind of activity in South America, huge allegedly here, but like I would say massively promoted by the CIA and other intelligence services in America, because it was part of political destabilization. There's been like 20 odd coups in South America, every single one of them, I think, busy provably backed at this point by by the United States. And
Yeah.
in doing so, they've created this situation where it's us versus them, and they're playing a pageantry. It's a game of you're the drug dealer, I'm the copper. Oh, quick, there's a person. Run, I'll chase you. Oh, la 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 la, and then just get around the corner. Gives you money. Here's your cut. And it's an illusion, as it were. And it's the same over here. It's the same anywhere. There is no wherever there is drugs, there is corruption of the police. We're seeing a huge reckoning in the Met Police at the minute in the UK around sexual assault and other offences, and they're now going to start really looking at, once they open that book. Jesus Christ, that's a deep tome. There is a lot of chapters with some really dark places that need to go to some dark places that need to be addressed, and one of these needs to be drugs, because as Neil Woods, another previous and prolific guest of mine, points out, the corruption is at every institutional level in this country, funded by the illegal drug trade, and that unless we go beyond this thing, I mean, look at what we've done with cannabis. In doing so, we've suddenly, in some ways, normalized all of the drugs without having that conversation. So now cocaine is so prevalent. I know people that look at me and go, dirty pothead. But as soon as somebody pulls out a bag of random white powder, doesn't matter what's in it, hey, I'm diving in that. And that's not to say that's a good or a bad thing, but it's that drug superiority. It's that idea that my drug is better than your drug, when it's like, well, no, we need to have this conversation about it all, because otherwise the same people that have built the cannabis trade, if we wrestle that back, they're going to move into the other drugs, and they'll use the marketing techniques, social media, the exploitation of the youth, and all of the other techniques that they've learned to make that the new cannabis. Whereas if we can just normalize drugs to a degree of going, all right, there's these things in the world, and some people do it, some people don't. And if you get in trouble, here's the services you can go to. Here's where you get the clean product. And because it's the same with cannabis. I mean, we're trying to figure out at the minute, I refuse to report on cannabis and fentanyl stories, because it's so difficult to figure out what is propaganda and what is actual truth within this. Because it does seem like there is an option and potential for some of these vaporized carts to have these kind of byproducts in. Because we'll allegedly, again, we're seeing it, but apparently it's being reported that we're seeing it. But because there's no like centralized authority, there's no space, there's no one we can trust in this conversation. Because the people that are then going, cannabis is the best thing ever in the world. Yeah, you're the CEO of a multinational corporation that's making 100 million a year selling weed. Of course you're going to say it's the best thing in the world. Then there's the guy who's like the alcohol company that's saying cannabis is the worst thing in the world. Well, yeah, you're losing tens of millions a year because of cannabis. I can see why so we don't have, do you know what I mean, that unbiased space in the middle, and everything is getting thrown together. So then the prohibitionist can go, well, those dope smokers. And then some people are like, well, what do you mean? Is that people that smoke fentanyl and heroin or cannabis? Like the language dilution and all of it. I know I'm not really making a point here. I'm just generally ranting. But yeah, I think that we need that true, honest conversation about cannabis. There needs to be. I mean, I'm biased. I can't help but be biased because I want drugs to the war on drugs to be over. So there needs to be those academics and those people that are funded to go and look at what stuff actually does. And this is what, to get me back to your university friend in Oregon, that if he's then only allowed to study hemp, as it were, he's going to miss all of cannabis.
I don't know about that. The characteristics are very, very similar. I'm sure he could take the THC dominant plants and develop them real quickly. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you got to keep your hands on stuff, keep working, Yeah, I mean, people say stuff all the time. My deal is to accomplish things all the time. And, making better genetics is really a good deal. Yeah, and just a note, you talked about fentanyl, and now in Mexico, what they're doing is they're buying this fentanyl, and they're making heroin or hard drugs out of it, and they don't even have to grow the poppies and stuff in Mexico. It's kind of like displaced a whole bunch of poppy growers. but I just thought I'd mention that.
That's kind of similar in some ways, as opposed to what we were discussing before about the CBD biomass and Delta 8, Delta 10, that people are then able to just buy a tub of liquid, do you know what I mean, and put it into edibles, put it into all this other stuff, and they've never needed to touch a plant. And again, that scares me. I will always, people ask why I still combust and whatever, I will always go to a flower because I know what a flower is. I can look at it, smell it, break it up. There's so many different ways I can verify whether I want to consume that plant. Whereas just some arbitrary liquid, I can't judge that. I don't, do you know what I mean? I can't work backwards. I can make a really good educated guess about how old that plant is, how sort of fresh it is, how long it's been exposed to various elements. Whether if you're going to have a puff sort of sound off the bottom of it, feeling you see tiny microbial molecules, other sort of, do you know? Whereas, it's
here we have, and other cities I've lived in too, but here in Barcelona we have the it's called Energy Control is the name of the place, but they'll test all of the drugs. You give them a bit of a drug and they'll test it. And you mentioned, we talked about cocaine and the superiority thing. Go test that stuff, and it's just full of crap. Very seldom. I was over there, the last time I was there, we tested 4 different cocaines, and not one of them had over or as much as 50% cocaine in it. The other ones were cut. There was one had speed in it. The other one had, and they all had, well, two of the 3 had four had laxative in them. And I don't remember what, but it was just laxative. Solid, I know. Yeah, but so there's a lot of really unsafe stuff. It should be well controlled some way. And same with cannabis, with the growing, when it's illegal, they were putting things, that are systemic pesticides that are guaranteed to cause cancer. Guaranteed. They were putting that on the plants. And, there's nobody to control it. Mm-hmm. And for example, at the Golden Tarp Awards, that's where they have the golden tarp is, covering the greenhouse in the summer. So you get a summer crop, right? And they have an awards for that. So they can have a couple of award ceremonies celebrations. But with that one, the first year they had that in Garberville in Humboldt County, 52% of the samples that came in were rejected because they had systemic chemicals or prohibited chemicals on the outside of them. Mm. And there was one of them that had aspergillus too. And I don't know, for people that don't know what aspergillus is, if you have a respiratory ailment like asthma, for example, and you smoke this with aspergillus, it very well could kill you. It could contract your throat, and you could die. That's it. So So somebody should be able to check this, and now that's happening quite a bit better, at least with the dispensary system, and you get the state involved. That works pretty well. I like that. But that's also a big problem, So there's, 2 things, like the hard drugs with the energy control and testing those, and then the cannabis. See, it makes a big difference. I think both of it, regardless of legality, it is ultimately down to regulation. It is who is regulating the first production of these products. So the guy that sat around with his big old vat and they're mixing up their fentanyl or whatever, you know what I mean? You want that to be the ethical guy. Do you know what I mean? And I hate this illusion or this delusion that is created by the media and prohibitionists. All drug dealers are these violent, vicious thugs. And they're just not. I've met some amazingly wonderful, compassionate people that, sell some potentially very dangerous drugs that, if not used correctly, can lead to serious consequence. But in their procurement, in their production, they make it to the highest possible standard because they use it too.
They are stuck within their own cycle. They are doing whatever they are doing, and the people that they operate with, they are not actively looking to get people into their network or whatever. They are just helping other humans get through a human fucking experience, and they give a shit about what they're producing. But the larger scale production of these things, well, look at cocaine production. It's got kerosene. It's got all fucking sorts. Because of its clandestine nature, it's made in laboratories in the fucking forest where people are literally stomping on it barefoot like wine grapes to mash up the materials. So there's then all these different byproducts that then go into its production when actually it could be produced organically, as you say. But the issue with both, whether it be legal or illegal, is the gaming of the system. So I've got on my next guest is Brandon Rust from Bakashi. I can't pronounce his company because I can't see it on my notes. Bakashi Earthworks. He's based out in Oklahoma, and they've just had the Cowboy Cup, and there was a big controversy about the Cowboy Cup. So we're going to talk about that, and it just basically reminds me of this idea that you grow a field of your plants, you submit one sample. Where's the best nug of the field? All right, all of this got mold, all of this was on pesticides. Get me that one nug at the back that didn't have any of that. Put that in a jar. And obviously there's then allegations, allegedly, that of people paying off the test facilities, the labs, the discrepancies that are allowed in the law of 10% here, 10% there. Then certain things not being tested down to parts per million for certain carcinogenic chemical byproducts, but also heavy metals, also other microbials and things that are bioaccumulated through the plant. So it just feels like if we then draw the line of the regulation, the bad actors in this space then go, oh, is that the line? Right, get right next to it, then put an inch over it, and it'd be like that football in the World Cup that was over the line, but because 1 millimeter of it was on the line, it's legal. That's where they now operate. And it's the same with the criminals. They do exactly the same. They go, right, how do we exploit the limits of what is on? And this isn't to advocate for a limitless access for all drugs, but it's for realistic access. We have to meet people where they are. And yeah, Oklahoma can start now growing all the weed that it wants, etc., and have the market that it's going to have. But realistically, how many people in Oklahoma want that weed? Like the thing of it, we need to produce the cannabis and put it where the cannabis consumers are. You've got millions of cannabis consumers in Japan that can't access cannabis that would love access to imported cannabis because Japan's never going to dedicate its time to growing cannabis. It's a tiny island nation or collection of islands to make a greater nation state. And for decades, they've already had to look at the cities, look at the blocks. Then think of places even like China that, granted, they have more agricultural arable land, but they don't have currently, even at their scale, the resource to turn that into the level of production and sophistication they would need. So again, there's still going to need this import for markets that do produce it. So we need this international export to open up. And I think it's your home state, Oregon, that are doing the most work in America to try and get interstate deals. Because as you say, they've got so fucking much of it.
Well, see, that's going to change everything. First, it was legalization, and then every state seems to have a different program to legalize. But once interstate commerce opens up, that's going to change everything drastically, because there's some states that are just really easy to, and cannabis, we defined earlier, is very adaptable to many different climates. So what's going to happen is wherever it's cheapest and easiest to grow, that's where it's going to grow. California is going to continue to be a big state. But states like Oklahoma, see, it'll grow out there. It grows okay. And I think there's about 6 million people in Oklahoma. There's about that, yeah. And it's a big agricultural state. I used to know the state horticulturalist there, Steve Dobbs. He was in the Garden Writers Association in America when I lived there. Yeah. And it's really, agricultural everywhere. It's full of farmers. And they will grow, or they can grow a heck of a lot of cannabis there. And I've already read about, like they've already had like a lot of illegal production happening. And it's only been 2-3 years that started. But say a company or a country or a state like that, Oklahoma, they could supply all of the states around them very, very easily. And if, like for example, California could supply the entire U.S. easily, easily. I mean, if you add it up, and it's not hard to do. Just add up the number of consumers, which is approximately 15% in the U.S. Of the population, and then there's a given number they'll consume. Let's call it, of 500 grams a year, and that's could be heavy. Some more, some less. There's different things, and then add that up, and you get a tonnage number. Okay, how many acres or hectares? It's easier hectares because it's metric. Does it take to grow that? And you find out maybe it's like 2 square miles or 3 square miles. That's not that much. That's not that much, And so that's what we're looking at. And then when international rules kick in, there's a lot of countries that figure they're going to be the biggest cannabis exporting country in the world. And I've already been, to Colombia. That's what they think. Mexico thinks the same thing. And Argentina, I think if they had a chance, they would jump on it. And Chile for sure. And Chile is pretty darn stable. And then there's other countries too, like all across Africa. I've talked to people, and they've had this on their mind. That's what they're doing. I know guys in South Africa that want to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And they got like a really competitive advantage on a lot of things. So, it's going to change. And I think the prices are going to change. It's going to make a different industry. Yeah. But when those things happen, and then another thing that it will happen is right now, the only country that allows banking for cannabis, full-on banking, is Canada. And that's why they're at the epicenter of everything. As far as, investment and the big business and stuff goes. Well, when the United States opens up the floodgates to the banking system, that will make a very dynamic change. There's, about approximately 10 times more people in the United States than Canada. And they're less conservative than the Canadians overall. So you got some pretty big dynamics coming up. And that stuff's going to happen sooner or later, and we can't do much about it. So all of the home growing, everything's going to change. All of the dynamics are going to change. And I don't know how. There's so many variables involved, but those great big ones like that, the interstate commerce first, and then the banking and the international commerce, that'll probably be limited to some things, but sooner or later it's gonna just take off.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're being pushed in all quarters globally to the precipice of a binary decision. Globally, we accept cannabis for everything it can do, or we all go down swinging. And it feels like that's what Russia are doing. Bear in mind, historically, Russia built itself as a cannabis-producing nation, so-called hemp. The British invaded and took over most of the world in its empire because of cannabis that it acquired from the production of, from the regions of Ukraine and Russia, when Ukraine was historically part of Russia, and it was their cannabis. Queen Elizabeth the First is quoted as basically saying that Russian hemp, as hemp was the term for cannabis at the time, it was basically far superior than anything grown anywhere on the planet. When you look at again these ruderalis 24-hour producing sort of plants, these day neutral genetics, look at Siberia, the regions up there, as the climate now begins to change with permafrost shifting, and the kind of general topography of the world is changing. I think that we need this international. The only thing that should be globalized, I think, at this point is cannabis trade, because its crude oils can replace petroleum. We don't need the Saudis to be the gods and gatekeepers of the world, and as we're currently seeing right now. We need to move away from these very limited tools and functions for these things. Whereas cannabis and its byproducts, it builds concrete, it makes plastics. Like we said, with in terms of producing batteries now, the cannabis graphene supercapacitor battery that if it could be scaled is more energy efficient than lithium cell. So we don't need these lithium mines of these children dying en masse around the world in these regions to be exploited. When you then look at, if you've seen about countries like Africa and other regions, they'll be able to get production of very low quality plants down to nothing, literally nothing for the areas, for the regions, because of things like advantage of the amount of water, the cheapness of labor, the infrastructure, because you can float it down rivers, so you don't need the road networks, etc. But when it comes to craft quality sort of flower, I still think your Californias and your wherever, every country is going to have its own kind of bespoke thing of that indoor production. But I think it'll only exist as much as the systems allow it to. Because I think in the future, energy production is going to become more limited until we have this transition away from petrochemical the manufacturing of crude oil into petroleum and petrochemicals. We're seeing this in pharmaceuticals. One of the largest byproducts of petroleum production, as more cannabis is produced and consumed, they're reduced, which means the byproducts of the crude are not getting used in the same way. So we're ending up with waste product. Whereas cannabis doesn't really have a waste product. Even its roots are useful for a multitude of things. Even just mulching it as a plant, it's massively beneficial to the microbiome and the space that it's in. As a carbon sequestration technology, as we spoke of, there is just so much that it can do if we can just get past. But some people smoke it and get a little bit high. It's like that'll be a tiny market. Even if 1 billion people smoke it, everyone will benefit from it as an antimicrobial. Using it, CBG, for example, in hospitals. In the UK, we've discovered it can tackle and defeat MRSA, which is a superbug bacteria that we've bred in our hospitals from the overuse of antiviral drugs. So there's just all these wonderful applications of it. You're now looking like sort of graphene. They're looking at cannabis-derived graphene, but it's oxidized. It's graphene oxide. So then you're looking at that in terms of the health impact of that. There's so many other things that get beyond some teenagers getting a bit high, man, and getting a bit wacky off that funny backy. Do you know what I mean? And I want to say a lot of the world moved towards that, but I feel like it's going to take us 50 years because everywhere needs their 2012 Oregon vote, California, Colorado, Washington vote moment. They need their city.
Yeah. The thing is, here in Spain, we really never got the drug war or the war on drugs, where it was beat into you. In North America, North America, because Canada gets everything that the U.S. has. This war on drugs was really a very serious thing. And, after the Soviet Union fell and split up, the U.S. didn't have any more enemies. They needed an enemy. And so they turned to us. They turned to, the cannabis people, young people, anybody using cannabis. Then they had a war. And they also went after crack and other things that had kind of surfaced a little earlier. But they turned their ire onto the cannabis people, really. And that's when the war on drugs got really crazy. But it didn't get that way all over the world. In some places it did, and it was publicized, in Mexico and Latin America, really Colombia, Mexico, and a few other hot spots in Peru and Bolivia. But in Africa, it really didn't. And also in Asia, a bit, but that was more associated with the war earlier. And now, like here, for example, we had the bombings, where they blew up 4 train stations here in Spain and killed quite a lot of people. And we called it 11M, the 11th of March. which is very similar to the 911 when the Twin Towers in New York were attacked. And in order to put the deal together to buy the explosives, they sold hash, traded hash straight away, cash and a quantity of cash for the explosives. So it was, cannabis was involved directly. That was never exploited. In the United States, it would have been exploited to the max. So, this drug war, it's there and it was used, but it depends on how much it was used in each country. So it's not everything's like it is up north, it's quite a bit different. There's, like in Latin America, there's another thing. Cannabis is usually most often used by Indians, and macho people drink alcohol. So it's looked down upon. For that's the main reason. Other places it's similar. But I think getting over the stigma, I think that can happen. But it's really getting the international law to change. That's what's going to make the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting, yeah, because it was America that basically started the fervor of all of this with the ramping up. So, I mean, we'll park the 1955 document, the World Health Organization, and so it was basically 61 was where the thing started to ramp up with the UN Single Convention. And then by the time we get through to the 1988 convention, that's where they codified the international trade and really tried to get the stuff between the borders, because that's what they'd kind of lost. They were going, right, as long as we pin it down in each country, and then they went, oh, shit, we can't regulate the space in the middle. What's going on? So then the international treaties, obviously 71 was where they started eradication. So that was when we can see on the maps where atmospheric carbon starts to go through the fucking roof. We start to see all kinds of issues that are now attributed to man-made climate change. Are like, yeah, it's because you started taking tens of billions of cannabis plants every year and destroying them. I mean, the DEA in America still destroys tens of millions of plants, most of which are feral, because cannabis seed can remain active for like 20 years. It just sits under the ground and you go, oh, we got rid of all the weed. And then next year it goes, ha. And then the DEA turn up with the guns and they go, who grew this weed? And everyone's like, well, it grew itself. And there's just cannabis is fighting back, but we're spending all of this money. And we did in Latin America. We did Latin America dirty. So in then the late 60s, all the way through the 70s, they were literally in helicopters pouring chemical agents into cannabis spaces, into crops and stuff, burning huge swaths of land to get rid of a couple of areas of wild cannabis that isn't going to produce anything. They don't have the infrastructure to remove it. And so,
I remember well. I was there. It was during the 70s. It was Paraquat. Paraquat was a growth regulator they put on, and it would kill the plants. It took about 2 weeks, and they would turn yellow. So what the narcos would do is they would harvest the plant before the effect came, and the plants turned yellow. And then they made up all kinds of stories about what Paraquat would do and how it would kill you and and it was all contrived by U.S. government. And then later, and then this happened in Colombia and also in Mexico, but I know direct stories in Colombia where they would use, the glyphosate Roundup, it's a weed killer. Anyway, it's got different strengths, different levels and concentrations to it. And there's levels that you cannot buy in North America, but they give to the government to apply in the jungle, where it gets into the water system. It kills a hell of a lot. Okay, so anyway, that's 5 times stronger, and that was like totally defoliating giant areas because they're putting it on in the airplanes. Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of pretty horrid stuff.
Yeah,
but and it's funny, I mean, you think about the cocaine in Colombia, the coca plants. Well, they grow everywhere. They grow, like they're like an ornamental. They grow as a weed. They're everywhere. They're not just on the east side of the Andes. They're on the west side. They grow down, not all the way to the coast. You got to go up a ways, but not much, and they're there. And I forget the altitude that you have to have, but I saw them all over every province, every what do they call it, district, every district in Colombia that I went to. It was amazing, and so to stop it would be impossible almost because it's like a weed. And then the second thing is they don't really want to stop it. They don't really care. They said it was cultural heritage for the Indians. Seems like that's the only thing they care about with the Indians. They pretty much screw them over on everything else, but they want them to have as much coca leaves as possible. It's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's protected.
Any world?
Well, it's protected as well because of sort of thinning of blood properties and things like that. So at altitude, it prevents altitude sickness. Can be used into other preparations, obviously as a topical painkiller, etc. So yeah, it's that kind of borderline of protecting the right to have a certain access. It's kind of what happened, go back a few centuries, and what the argument with poppies was. With some people could make poppy tea and whatever else, and it would be quite benign. You smoke your little bit of opium, and it was again relatively benign. Yes, there were problems with dependencies in areas of socio-economic deprivation. Also, I suppose across society, the small minority of people can get dependency issues to any substance. But then as they started to biosynthesized and created heroin and started selling heroin, and then they moved on to all these other sort of derivatives and whatever. It suddenly became whoa. You can't have your little thing that does that little stuff to you because the thing we've made is so terrible. And if that feels like what they're doing with some of these synthetic cannabinoids, they're allowing those to proliferate to go, that's why we're going to get rid of THC. And it feels the emphasis needs to be on the United States to go to the UN and go, we fucked up. Yo, guys, we really got this wrong. We listened to fucking Reagan and Nixon. I know, really bad. Don't know why we did. What we're going to do is we want to have a unilateral body, global body that's then going to look at the consequences of the war on drugs, what drugs actually do, why people take drugs, and then act upon it. Like what Portugal did in 2001, actually go, let's take the data and apply the best practice. Because if the main crux of the argument of why we're not allowed cannabis is because mother government that loves you is only looking out for your best health. That's the argument. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to. If they're not allowed, they don't claim to have this supremacy or totalitarian authority to rule over you. They go, I care about you, and you shouldn't do that because you might get hurt. And it's an absurdity. Sure. Whereas if we got this evidence base of, well, actually, Gary here drinks 20 pints on a fucking Friday night and ends up costing the state between £2,000 and £30,000 in damages every weekend. Then there's this guy, Bob, who grows 3 plants of cannabis and never interacts with anybody, pays his tax on his light, his newt, his feed, is a lovely neighbor, helps his grandmother across the street, Who do we criminalize? Who do we have the problem with? It's the data doesn't follow the fact, and that's not just overgeneralized, but do you know what I mean? We need to understand what drugs actually do rather than what they tell us they do, because I've been taking drugs and interacted with the drug culture for over 2 decades, and I've met a handful of idiots that maybe act in the way that the propagandists for the prohibitionists say, and that's usually because they're having a mental health crisis, they've drank a lot of alcohol and then taken another substance, or they're in some way not taking responsibility for what they are doing and where they are. Whereas everybody else that
that's pretty normal.
Are reasonable, going, I have taken this substance, I am going to respectfully engage in the world in this way. And that's all I want, is that we're over 18, we should be able to take our responsibility. And that's the same for growing however many plants at home, or going out in the club and doing whatever,
Well, in 1972, 1974 is right in there. There was the Schaefer Commission that reported to Richard Nixon about whether cannabis should be legal or not. And they came back and said 100%, it should be legal. There's no reason for it not to be legal. It's rather benign. That's what the opinion they had at that time. And Nixon looked at the report and said, well, I can't publish this. We can't, we've got to bury this. This doesn't go with what America wants. America doesn't want this. This doesn't make sense. And yeah, and it's been like, and then later there was a Warren Commission, and then study after study has been, this is pretty darn good. So, it's all a political football. And that's why I don't know what the heck's going to happen. And I just continue to go my own way and do the same thing as before because, I believe I'm having an effect. So, and that's what people say. So I'm going to just stay with it and keep growing and teaching people to grow.
Yeah, man. I think that's the best attitude to have for sure. So in that vein, actually, then got a few questions. Just some basic tips because obviously you've been growing cannabis for a long time. Obviously, I imagine quite a few of my audience out there probably has a quiet clandestine grow, or maybe a tent in their back room. So you got some basic tips for people to, I don't know, improve their yield, quality.
Yeah, if you can at all grow outside, hopefully you've got a legal place to grow. If you have to grow indoors, the LED lights are great. They really are. And yeah, there's a guy up there, a Scottish guy, no, Irish, Migro, Migro, that has LED lights, and he's an engineer, and he produces some really great videos. You might want to check into that, to his videos on YouTube that, well, you can learn tons. But I'd be using the LED lights. They use about half as much electricity for actually more useful light for plant growth. And yeah, grow a small garden inside if you can. It's a lot of fun. And then if you have the opportunity, grow outdoors, grow in a greenhouse or a just open air. You can start your plants indoors and move them outdoors under plastic early on in the year, even up north. And here in Spain, you can grow a good deal of the year, except for, well, the sunlight's just not as bright in the winter. Well, just like anywhere in the world. Winter months is not as bright. And then also, please pick up one of my books. This is a free one. It's called We Grow Cannabis. It's a 100-page book, and it'll get you, give you a good start. It's this one's in English. In a couple of weeks, I'll have one in Spanish. It's called Cultivamos Cannabis, and it's the same book. It's just in Spanish. Mm-hmm. So anyway, those are the tips. I would also start with good seeds, really good seeds. That's important. If you can start with clones, good, but seeds are better. Get something that's easy to grow if you're a new grower. Yeah, and I've also done well, gosh, I don't know, maybe I think maybe close to 300 videos on YouTube, cultivation videos. So there's all kinds of information there to look up. And then you might want to look into some of my books, Marijuana Horticulture and Cannabis Encyclopedia. Those you can find on Amazon. But in the future, I'm going to be putting these books on online. And the Marijuana Horticulture, it'll be in the 6th edition. Right now, the one that's for sale is the 5th edition, but the 6th edition, I'm going to, well, I've already updated it, and I'm going to put it on my website and make it really easy to search and stuff. And then also, we're going to collect more information so we can get more information in the book, and it'll be a real good center place to find information. It's really a good thing, because so often information's dispersed around and stuff. And now I'm working with a couple of other guys that are really, really cool. Stefan Meyer, who's he's a Swiss guy, and I've known him for God, maybe 25 years now. Yeah. And he's been to every cannabis conference, scientific conference for the last 20 years. I mean, the guy's amazing. And so we work all the time together. We talk every day. And then also Dr. Gary Yates, and he's from up north. He's a Scottish guy. I'm finally learning to understand him, but I'll tell you what, yeah, and he tones the language down for me. He's good that way. He's really good. But man, he's got a doctorate degree, excuse me, in microbiology, and his chemistry knowledge is incredible. And he's also got in-depth education in genetics, plant genetics. So I've surrounded myself with a couple of really good people, and they know a lot more people. So we're really developing a community and asking people to join. And the way to join is, first thing to do is download the We Grow Cannabis book. And then we'll have your mailing list. We'll put you on a mailing list and keep sending you stuff. And tell you about everything that's going on. But I've got some very big projects, and I'd like everybody to be involved.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure there's all the links below so people can get the PDF download of that and check out your website and keep an eye on all the things that you're working on. Just sort of reading through my notes here, seeing some questions that I've missed, if anything, that I really wanted to ask. God, you can tell I was taking some oil last night with the way my handwriting. It starts really confidently at the start of the sentence, and then by the end of it, it's just squiggles. So one of them, have you ever had any legal issues? You've obviously been growing now and writing for decades. Have you managed to avoid the long arm of the law in that time?
Yeah, I mean, I'll knock on wood.
I'll do it for you as well.
So far so good. I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of close calls and stuff. I just don't take things so serious. I mean, it used to be really serious, but I'll tell you, I mean, those guys in Canada, they're so nice, Anyway, I was coming over. I had to cross the border into Canada from America over there for Toronto. Yeah, came into Toronto and out and then go to, and I remember I got there and I was walking, I was going to leave, and then this security guard, well, the security is like a border guard, touches me on the shoulder, and I go, yeah, sure, yeah, what do you want? And then I noticed the dog had been following me. He says, didn't you see the dog following you? I go, no, I wasn't paying any attention. He goes, well, it looks like you had a controlled substance in your suitcase. And I go, oh yeah, it had a lot of dope in it yesterday. I had about 100 grams in it, but I just took all that out, so I don't have it anymore. And that's why it still smells. He says, well, we're going to have to check. I go, yeah, sure, no worries. But those guys were so nice, I mean, he didn't treat me like a criminal or anything. He just said I had to do that because the dog was sitting down there, right, looking at me like he was going to get a treat or something. And then anyway, yeah, and I was searched, and then I was gonna miss my flight, so it took a while, so I had to walk back through, and I walked behind the lines again, and I go, oh look, there's my buddy, and I waved. He turns around and he smiled. He smiled because it was, I don't know, it's just a good moment right then. But he didn't wave. So I go, yeah. But that was the last, anything. But that was just a small thing. I've had other things that have been, quite serious, but I don't really need to go into like bad vibe shit like that. I can't say I didn't have to wear a disguise for a lot of years, so I could cross borders. I could be public and otherwise. When I didn't have the disguise on, I could pretty much go everywhere. They didn't have the border patrol didn't have the the or the border crossing, not really patrol. They didn't have the internet. They couldn't look your name up on the internet all the time, or they didn't have nearly as much information. So it was really quite a bit easier. But yeah, I had a lot of very scary times. But I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like in the past, and I don't need to dwell on any stuff. Just a lot of scary times. That's all.
Yeah, man. I was just sort of gauging of where we're moving to now. So it's I suppose juxtapose where this next question of, are there any regions in the world where you couldn't publish, where you would still fear for you as an educator traveling through?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Russia right now. I don't know, because there's a dispute going on with the that the United States is involved with in the West, and with my history, and they use my image for everything. They're selling mushrooms over there in Russia, right? And so they took one of my pictures off the internet. I got a picture of it here somewhere. It's a Russian advertisement where they're selling mushrooms. So, there's got to be some kind of information about me in the Russian system that would come up on the computer. So I wouldn't go over there, especially right now. I don't know. Most places you're okay, but as far as publishing goes, no. I've had trouble with publishing quite a few places, but well, no, in Australia and Canada to get books in there, and then other places, Italy, the grocery stores. It's usually been local things, uh, uh, but it stops your sales. Yeah, a lot of censorship, and that's been in the United States and Canada. Uh, less, but I just don't know the directly in Latin America. Um, yeah, in France, right? Yeah, yeah. But now it's a lot different. See, because I can do everything digitally and send it in, and if the computer message doesn't arrive, well, I can't. I can a lot of times get around that. But like for example, in Russia, they closed off computer access for cannabis stuff about 4 years ago, probably five, maybe now, maybe longer. Yeah. And another place that's really difficult is Japan, because it's very, very closed. I've got a book in Japanese, but man, I mean, I've never been to a country where they always search you, always. Every time you cross the border, they always search you, and they search every one of your bags, and they do a thorough job of it. Never been to a place like that, you know.
Yeah.
Usually it's like 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, but not like that. Yeah. So, it's much, much better. A digital world changes everything. I can distribute much faster. It's really a good deal.
Nice, nice. I've just got sort of two more quick questions here, really. You're obviously out in Spain. You've been living there for quite a while now. The club scene out there, I haven't really managed to keep abreast of much of the news recently. I think during COVID, one of the was it the Barcelona Mayoral Council had kind of made inclinations towards what's the word? Sort of not supporting the judicial opinion that the clubs operate as private spaces. There was a few raids around the sort of time on a couple of the clubs. What's the scene looking like at the minute? Have things settled down? Are they kind of back to where they
No,
were?
nobody really knows for sure. It just seems to be kind of like a detente. They were going around. There was they would have a policeman and a city building inspector go around together, and they would come by and make inspections, and they would make people nervous because you're only supposed to have a small amount of cannabis there. I think less than a kilo, or a small amount, and then you're not supposed to break building code violations. All of the building codes changed here, or yeah, they all changed in 2012. So that changed everything. It changed the whole rental and the business situation and who was doing what. But overall, they're in business. There was some that were, definitely they were slinging kilos out the front door, guaranteed. They had a lot of other illegal things going on. Those guys, there's one from Serbia, all those guys, that one got popped. That was over down by in Barceloneta by the sea. Then there was a couple others, but I don't pay really close attention to that. Um, there's a couple of clubs I go to, well, one in particular, really, and everything's just been kind of like business as usual. But there was that blip, and it happened like last summer, and all the way through the fall time. But it seems to be kind of like over. And the mayor is always kind of like she's not real well liked. There's been things going on, the traffic circulations. They build at the same time in different places, and the whole traffic is all screwed up, and other things. So I don't know. It just kind of comes up once in a while, but it hasn't really come to a head. So it's still tolerated,
Okay.
but business as usual.
Good to know. Good to know. I imagine quite a lot of my listeners and audience are quite interested. Obviously, Spannabis is coming up in a couple of months.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's
and
going to be big.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide what to do myself. I haven't been through an airport or traveled since the C word that we can't say because it'll get me that little warning underneath the shore. The pandemic, when that hit, I haven't been through an airport since. And I'm kind of a bit like, what's the rules? I don't know what the crack is now. I think as long as I can walk through without having to shove something up my nose or down my throat, I'm happy to travel. So yeah, I think I might be out in Spannabis. So hopefully,
Yeah,
get
cool.
out to see firsthand kind of what's happening with the scene there, because I get worried where established cannabis communities, these hubs around the world, they become these kind of beacons, and then we kind of accidentally rest on our laurels. So Amsterdam and the coffee shop scene, Barcelona and the club scene, I think a Nimbin in Australia, other regions like
Yeah.
Freetown, Christiania in Denmark, etc., where we just suddenly get a victory and everyone's like, "Yeah, we're living this way," and we forget to defend ourselves against the incoming politicians and authorities. And I think that's kind of what's happened with legalization as well. We're all just in some
Yeah.
areas resting our laurels, going, "It's brilliant," and it's like, well, yeah, when these guys retire and we get the next bunch of guys in, unless we've got the ability to unionize, defend ourselves, collectivize, to sound very socialist about it, then we risk them signing a piece of paper that says we're not allowed to do this anymore. And so
Yeah,
yeah, I'm just
actually in America, they're continuing to hammer on the legalization everywhere. There's a lot of activity there. Here it's a bit slower, it always has been. People just kind of want to be left alone here. There was a big legalization movement earlier, and it's just not as strong now. Um, yeah, it's different. It's different. There's a lot of growing going on here because of the climate. Um, and yeah, oh yeah, you can go onto the YouTube and look up Guardia Civil, Guardia Civil, 2 words, Guardia Civil, and then cannabis after that. And you can see all of the cannabis arrests. But they've been stepping up the pressure here for sure.
Yeah, it seems to be a growing thing everywhere. The closer we get to, let's call it neoliberalist, capitalist legalization, the harder they press on the people that have been fighting for that legalization or that movement. I think of one of probably your contemporaries in some ways, of Mark Emery up in Canada.
Oh yeah.
And his work with the literature, and then with magazines, and then ultimately sort of dispensaries, and then was legally locked out of the industry. I mean, for all there's probably some contention around his personal life and character, his activism.
I got to stop right now and go to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries.
See, it was Mark Emery. I remember marking that in my.
Yeah. So it's just sort of saying that the work that he's done in that region, I think it's quite emblematic of what's happened to him, of what I feel and see happening around the world, is that the individuals that are active in that area fighting against the oppression of those laws and for active change are then often locked out by those laws and that change. And
Oh yeah.
it feels very disingenuous and painful for someone like myself that has lived in this and operated in this space for, well, decades, privately and professionally. Not to say that I want to become a millionaire and a kingmaker in this space at all, but I want to be able to have the opportunity, if I choose, to go and make a living from the plant that I fought to protect. Do you know what I mean? In the same way that if I have a passion for alcohol, I can go work in a bar. There should be the same sort of systematic access, and not just in employment, but in ownership as well. And we're not really seeing that around the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a whole new thing, though. Everything, and in America, you see a lot of it, but there's big layoffs now. It's a shakeout going on, actually. They produced too much and got too happy. There's only enough space uh, for a few people, or for, yeah, a given number of people, and everybody can't be in the same industry. What's an example? I remember, like, in I went to farms in Oregon where they were hauling water, hauling water, and they had to heat their greenhouses. And then I went to farms in California in an agricultural area where they bought their water by the acre foot, and they didn't have to heat the greenhouse, so they had a very big advantage. So if you want to grow cannabis, you should be right there in that place where you can have an advantage, not in the other place where you have a disadvantage. So that's just part of the marketplace. I mean, I wish it were different, but that's the way it is. And some of those guys just going to have to find something else to do. Uh, you know, uh, if you want to work at the bar, you don't go hang out in Utah, for example, where they have a dry state or they have very few bars. You go hang out in like what, Colorado, where they have more bars. You find your work there. So that's just a fact of life. I wish it were different. And as the industry grows, we're going to be able to have well, more people can participate. But yeah, there's going to be a very big shakeout. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
as well, there's one right now.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it across the board. I mean, you've got some rabble rousers, usual kind of economic doomsayers, saying we're moving into a very dangerous window right now. And then you've got your Amazon laying off like 10,000 people. You've got Facebook laying off a load of people. You've got Elon laying off half of Twitter and the rest of them. So there are these big, like I said, we're moving towards more the economic models of automation as well. So there's all
Yeah.
sorts of robot and AI technology in the cannabis cultivation space that is terrifying in some ways, but fascinating in others.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, huh? I always kind of liked, like growing the plants, and touching everything and picking up the shovel and
Mm.
the water and fertilizer. I always liked all of that stuff. That's good big reason to do it. And everything's going to get automated. But when you talk about automation, the big scale farming, that hasn't been automated yet. They're still looking for, machines, especially harvest machines. They've got planting and everything else down, but harvest machines to pull the cannabis off of the plants and keep the flowers intact. It's a bit of a complex process, and they don't have good machinery to do that yet.
Yeah, obviously they're really working on it, and I think this is one of the things we're seeing um, with certain investment vehicles as kind of a euphemism from Canada and America and Israel moving into Afghanistan, Pakistan, looking into those kind of regions and yeah, cherry picking and pulling out knowledge and experience because I mean they're still beating cannabis the same way they have done for 500 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is, so for all these guys, they're bringing in all these kids from the botanical degrees in university. That, well, I've studied all of this. It's like, yeah, but this guy's there that literally, oh, well, my grandfather told me, and his grandfather, and his grandfather, and it's direct descended knowledge. Granted, it's only anecdotal. So we in the West have gone, oh, we don't need that. And we've got on this 500-year route around the world to come back through all this technology to go, how do you guys do it? So then we can understand beyond the science of it. We need to understand the soul of it. I know that sounds so anti-scientific. What I mean is that we need to know why we do what we do with the plant in order to learn more about it. Do you know what I mean? Not just replicate it. So
Yeah.
the
Well, yeah,
drying techniques, traditional separation techniques. Again, there was a thriving cannabis industry in the UK in what, the 1500s and beyond. I mean, the Vikings brought it here in the 10th century and were cultivating it. So they had to
yeah.
be able to utilize it in ways, obviously not to the same scales that we would need it now, but they didn't have the same sort of technology. I mean, shit, we look at the pyramids and we don't know how they built that. So there's the missing technology, and I think there's the missing technology in cannabis that's hidden within traditional cultures, that's hidden within cultures that have grown the same genetics for hundreds of years.
Hmm.
Whether they'll ever share it, I don't know.
Rob Clark could be a real good guy to talk to about that because he's certainly traveled a lot more than me to indigenous places to see where uh how it's changed over time. Yeah, he'd be a real good guy to talk to about that. He wrote that Marijuana Botany, and he also wrote Hemp Diseases and Pests. He was a co-author on that with John McPartland and Dave Watson. But he's really good at the cultural aspects and seeing how things change over time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, it's just a beautiful day here in Barcelona. Well, I'm right south of Barcelona, looking at the Mediterranean Sea, and it's a bit windy today, but oh, we've got it's like 320 days of sun here. Oh, it's amazing.
Again, not jealous over here. There is actual sunlight I've just observed outside. So yeah, I think let's wrap this up and both go out and get some vitamin D and enjoy this beautiful day.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I'll ask you the same question I ask all my guests, really, as their final question, or at least when I remember to do so. Um, what does the future hold for you? You've obviously spoke of, producing content now rather than publishing in print format of more digital content. But so what else I was gonna say, what else can you possibly want to achieve after publishing 50 books? Another 50 more?
Well, well, yeah, it's okay. So, it's funny in my publishing career, I literally went from hot lead. I used to cast hot lead and make letterpress. I went from that to offset press, and then now I'm going to digital. So I've seen this for literally the entire gamut from one end to the other. So I'm pretty fascinated with publishing as I am with cannabis. So this is the next step, be all digital publishing, because I can reach more people. And my goal has been since the beginning to teach people to grow more and better cannabis. And so I just want to amplify that. And now we've got a bigger opportunity than ever. I've never been able to reach so many people so quickly. And yeah, so I'm putting my books online. I'm just in the process of figuring out how to do that and make it work. So they're very easy to research. Like I said earlier in the interview, I've rewritten Marijuana Horticulture. It's the Bible, everybody calls it. And I'll make it interactive so you can add information to it. It's got to be, confirmed and everything, information. But I'm looking to make a center place so we can have a real community of cannabis growers and find a place that's, where we can go there, interact. and look and see how people are doing things in other places as well. My first book will be in Spanish, in along this realm. We grow cannabis will be cultivamos cannabis, and then I'm also making plans shortly after that to go into Italian and German. And I don't have other languages sorted, but we got native translators for those two languages. One of them's a partner of mine that talks native Italian, and the other one's a German friend I've known for like 25 years. And yeah, so I'm going to continue to do that. And other stuff, I'm not quite sure of right now, but this stuff I've already, made decisions. I've got the machine is moving. This will happen. Soon we will put Cannabis Encyclopedia online in Spanish, Enciclopedia del Cannabis, and that'll be a real good thing. Yeah, but this way I'll be able to disseminate stuff all over Latin America. And before I was having a real hard time getting pallets of books there at a reasonable price. Yeah, so that's kind of like that's it's kind of like a full plate, I'd say.
Quite. Yeah, well, I just want to basically thank you for taking the time for this. Thank you for the work that you've done within this space, because you've set trends, continue to blaze and blaze new trails, and wish you all the best with sort of this digitalization of sort of the work moving forward, because I think it's going to reach a whole new audience. You've got a whole new generation of individuals that are going to want to cultivate cannabis, interact with cannabis, and I think that it's a brilliant thing that you're still so eager and enthusiastic and full of life and curiosity about cannabis. I think it's a wonderful thing to see. So yeah, thank you for taking the time to sit and record with me.
Hey, thank you, Simpa. I'm so happy to be here, and keep growing. Plant some more today.
For sure. I'll let you get off now, and I'll do my usual housekeeping and record the end of the show.
All right.
And
all right.
I'll drop you a message and let you know when it's ready to go live.
Okay, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. This time flew right by.
Yeah, for sure. It's been awesome. Really enjoyed it. Cheers again, George.
Okay, hey, for sure.
Right,
Take it easy, Simpa. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Peace. Bye. Yo, there you go, folks. That was Jorge Cervantes. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Yeah, a really great chat there. Covered a whole host of different subjects and topics, and yeah, hope we got to know George a bit better. We'll obviously include the links to his YouTube, free books, online content, website, etc below, so do check that out. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoy all these podcasts, but especially this one. And yeah, I need to get on the road. So you fine folks, we're going to wrap this up. If you really enjoyed this, give us a like, share, and a subscribe. Do check us out on patreon.com/the Simpa Life, where for less than a cup of coffee a week, you can help me keep the lights on and help me fundraise for a logo. I've just found a company that's going to do my neon light Simpa Life, which is going to fix here. So yeah, need to help get the funds together for that. So if you got a couple of spare quid, do chuck them that way, folks. It's greatly appreciated. I do not want to take on, as I've said, sponsors or advertisers on this platform. So yeah, I want to keep it organic. I want to keep it within house and within the community. Finally, I suppose, as usual, check us out on all social media platforms at Simpa Life. You've been beautiful. You've been wonderful. And I can't wait to see you all next week with Brandon Rust. So yeah, check that one out as well. All right, peace and love, folks. So yeah, one of the most prolific. Oh, I've just lost him. Damn it. Oh, you gotta love the internet.